Pearl has been a main character in SpongeBob since the show started. But the fact is, anyone who is older than 8 years old would have always questioned how come Pearl, a whale, is somehow the daughter of a crab. And the reason is frankly because she isn't actually his daughter. There have always been a lot of theories floating around on the origins of Pearl and how she ended up with Mr. Krabs. And today we're gonna explore some of these theories and give each of them a serious look.
Why does it have to be this way? It's for the best.
The first thing I would like to point out is that it was actually intentional by the creator of the show, Steven Hillenburg, that the cast of main characters were to be unique. Case closed, right? Not really. I mean, it would be easy to point out that SpongeBob is consistently inconsistent and brushed at this father-daughter relationship as just another inconsistent part of the show. But the fact remains that Pearl being Mr. Krabs' daughter is one of the biggest secrets of the show that was never talked about in detail. Hillenburg did state in interviews that questions surrounding Krabs and her were the most asked questions submitted by fans. So how did a crab end up with a whale daughter? Well, the first thing I want to look at is Whale of a Birthday, where Mr. Krabs is planning a birthday party for Pearl and he utters the phrase, "Pearl takes after her mother." Now, most fans default to the idea that Mr. Krabs was talking about Pearl being a whale and that's why she takes her mother's traits, right? But no, that is not what's happening here. Mr. Krabs is referring to Pearl's love for money and shopping to be just like her mother, not her whale characteristics. This leads me to conclude that Pearl was actually adopted by the Krabs family. But where are her parents? Okay, let's start by addressing Mr. Krabs. If there is something everyone knows about Mr. Krabs, I mean, besides him being a crab of course, is that he is one of the greediest people in Bikini Bottom. And his love for money surpasses almost everything and anyone. So why would someone who is this greedy get married? For God's sakes, the guy showers in money. See, I believe that the reason the show never showed Mrs. Krabs is because she actually never existed. Think about it, we've seen Mr. Krabs at the Krusty Krab, his house, on vacation, and many flashbacks where he is always alone.
There ain't nothing fancy about that word!
You mean...
Yes, that one!
Now, the story of what happened to Pearl's biological mother is not explicitly stated in the series, but there is a fan theory by John Negroni of what happened to Pearl's mother, which seems to be the most accepted one. The story pretty much goes that the mother and daughter pair were swimming along when suddenly Pearl's mother gets trapped by a hook from whale hunters. Unable to swim away, she just continues bleeding and then she passes away while holding her little baby whale Pearl. Now, this is when Mr. Krabs just happens to be walking down when he spots this giant sperm whale trapped and tries to save her. Unable to do so though, he feels like a failure until he realizes that there's actually a baby whale unharmed and scared. Mr. Krabs hesitates due to the implications of raising her, but then decides it's his duty to take care of this little girl and decides to adopt her.
Great rusty hinge pin of Davy Jones' locker!
But can we find any evidence of this actually happening in the series? Well, when SpongeBob and Patrick play with fishing hooks, Mr. Krabs becomes obsessed with stopping them. And even as a kid watching this, I always thought to myself, why? I mean, clearly he seems to be the only one in the show who surprisingly was very terrified of these hooks. Almost like he had some kind of past with them.
They're back! They're back, I tell you! I saw them with my own eyes!
So maybe John's fan theory might actually be a real thing. Okay, but let's say I'm reaching. There's another theory where maybe Mrs. Puff could help us find out who Pearl's mother is. See, in the episode Doing Time, SpongeBob repeatedly fails his driver's license exam, leading to chaos in the city.
Hey, what do you got against the melons?
He eventually drives off an unfinished bridge and the police just follow him. They land on a truck carrying fruit punch and cause it to spill and flood at a rest home. Mrs. Puff, who was supervising SpongeBob, is sent to prison for gross negligence. And this is where we have our first encounter with a blue whale as one of the female prisoners that Mrs. Puff calls her people. And considering we really don't know anything about this whale, we can kind of assume that she had a difficult upbringing and that she probably got involved in some kind of troubled activities, which ultimately led to her incarceration. But what if there was more to the story where this whale could actually be Pearl's mother? And when she found out about her pregnancy and realized she couldn't provide a stable environment for her child, she was forced to put her up for adoption.
No, baby, no more crying!
This might seem like a stretch of imagination, but this whale does appear in other episodes of SpongeBob as well. And being that she's the only other female whale that we see in the series, this leads me to believe that there is more to her story.
I somehow just realized what's happening!
So did I!
Now, I have seen this theory floating around, but my biggest doubt about this theory comes from the fact that she is a blue whale, while Pearl is a sperm whale. And yeah, sure, Pearl could have taken all of her traits from her father, but I think this blue whale's role in the series is a little deeper and yet less subtle that I want to explore more at the end of this video. But what about Pearl's father? Well, in the episode Jailbreak, we find Plankton in prison, gathering support from fellow prisoners in order to escape and steal the formula of the Krabby Patty. One inmate in particular caught my attention, a gray sperm whale that happened to be the only other character that matches Pearl's traits exactly to a T. He is even happy helping Plankton, which begs the question, could this guy be Pearl's father and is just seeking revenge on Mr. Krabs by helping Plankton hurt Krabs where it hurts him the most? His business. Again, we don't have enough background information on this whale to determine whether or not he is the father of Pearl, but I know what you're thinking. Why would you bring up this story or the other inmates into this conversation and we can't make any meaningful conclusion? Because there seems to be a larger idea brewing in my mind about Pearl, whales, and the world of SpongeBob. Growing up watching the series and seeing the world of Bikini Bottom, it always struck me the fact that so many different sea creatures were shown, yet whales were very rare. In fact, since 1999 when SpongeBob first aired, there have been only a handful of episodes where whales other than Pearl are shown. And then again, when we do encounter these whales in the storyline, these whales are often incarcerated, which begs the question, are whales supposed to be a lower society class in Bikini Bottom? It almost seems to be a subtle way for the creators of the show to let the audience draw these conclusions based on their choices of why whales are always in prison in the show. What if Pearl is the exception to the rule and happens to be the only whale in good standings with the law? I mean, Pearl loves to go on shopping sprees, but that is easy to do when your father is literally footing the bill.
You bought me a boat?
I did? I did?
So maybe Pearl would be a criminal as well if Mr. Krabs couldn't pay for her lavish lifestyle. That is a question that we probably really will never know. But apparently there was a plan to make a 2-episode long origin story of Pearl and finally let us see Mrs. Krabs. However, Steven Hillenburg shelved it as he wanted to save it and make sure that it was perfect, cause he didn't want it to get started until he had the story approved. Now, Hillenburg's secrecy about Pearl and her mother were unfortunately taken to his grave as he passed away in 2018. And with his passing, also the origin story that was never told.
My little girl is finally a star.
It is possible that one day we will learn what SpongeBob's creators had in mind for Mr. Krabs and Pearl, possibly letting us see Mrs. Krabs. But as of right now, it's something that we can only think about in our imagination. Regardless, I believe it is safe to say that Pearl wasn't adopted, but actually just found, like the fan theory art I showed earlier. Because Mr. Krabs is way too greedy to even pay for adoption fees.
You make cork grinds come out me nose.
But anyways, this is the last message I want to leave you guys off with, that even when someone like Mr. Krabs with major flaws like being greedy can be warmed to the idea of helping others, like raising a whole whale, even if it goes against their typical way of life.
Daddy. 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 Daddy.
And he does love her. I mean, after all, the sign of the Krusty Krab is a clamshell, the same place where pearls come from. But anyways, that's gonna be it for today's video. Smash like, smash subscribe. Thank you for watching.